The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive ring of metal and glass that orbited the planet Velthrus Prime. Inside, representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sections. Some breathed oxygen like humans, others required different atmospheres, sitting behind protective barriers filled with methane or sulfur clouds. The chamber was designed to accommodate everyone, but today comfort was the last thing on anyone's mind. Ambassador Jiwan sat alone in the human section. She was a tall woman with short black hair and calm eyes that missed nothing. She wore a simple gray suit, nothing fancy or decorated. She didn't need medals or bright colors to command respect. The fact that she represented humanity was enough to make the other delegates nervous. High Arbiter Veltha stood at the center of the chamber. He was a Korthan, a species that looked like upright insects covered in blue and silver chitin. His forearms moved as he spoke, gesturing to the holographic displays that floated around him. "We gather today to address a threat," Veltha said. His voice came through the translation devices everyone wore. "A threat that has grown beyond acceptable parameters. The humans have won 3 wars in the past 20 years. 3. Against species that have existed for thousands of years longer than they have." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Jiwan didn't move. She simply watched and listened. A Velix representative stood up. The Velix were large beings covered in thick fur that changed colors with their emotions. Right now this one's fur was deep red, the color of anger and fear mixed together. "My people lost 12 colony worlds to human forces," the Velix delegate said. "We thought we were fighting an army. Instead, we faced something we had never seen before. Soldiers who wouldn't stop, who couldn't be stopped." The holographic display changed. It showed footage from one of the battles. Human Marines in their armor moved through a Velix fortification. The Velix defenders fired weapons that should have killed them, plasma bolts that could melt steel, projectiles that could punch through walls. The humans kept coming. One human soldier took 3 direct hits that penetrated his armor. The medical readouts on the display showed massive damage to his internal organs. By all logic, he should have died instantly. Instead, he kept fighting for another 4 minutes, killing 6 more Velix defenders before finally collapsing. "They fight like they don't understand death," another delegate whispered. Veltas brought up more images. These showed a human ground assault on a Korthan fortress world. The Korthan had prepared for months. They had weapons, traps, and defensive positions that had held against invasions for centuries. The humans adapted. When the Korthan used gas weapons, the humans sealed their suits and kept fighting. When the Korthan collapsed tunnels, the humans dug themselves out and found new routes. When the Korthan tried to wait them out, starving them of supplies, the humans ate local plants and insects that would poison most other species. Captain Doyen appeared in several of the recordings. He was a Marine officer, scarred and serious, leading his troops through hell itself. In one clip, he was giving orders while field medics worked on a wound in his side that was still bleeding. He didn't even seem to notice the pain. "This is their regular military," Veltha said, letting that sink in. "Not their elite forces. Not their special units. These are their standard soldiers. Humans they consider ordinary." Jiwan finally stood up. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. Some delegates flinched back instinctively. "You invited me here to discuss limitations on human military expansion," she said. Her voice was calm and professional. "I'm authorized to have that discussion. What exactly are you proposing?" A Thexian delegate, a being that looked like it was made of living crystal, spoke up. "We propose that humanity accept council oversight of all military operations outside your own territory. We propose limits on your fleet sizes and army numbers. You propose that we give up our sovereignty," Jiwan interrupted. "That we let you control our ability to defend ourselves. We propose that you stop being a threat to the entire galaxy," the Thexian shot back. Jiwan smiled, but there was no humor in it. "A threat. We've fought 3 defensive wars. 3 times other species attacked us or our colonies. 3 times we defended ourselves. And now you're afraid because we won." "You didn't just win," Veltha said. "You devastated forces that should have crushed you. You fight with a ferocity and endurance that defies biological logic. Your soldiers survive wounds that would kill any of us. They fight in conditions that would stop our armies cold. You train every single human soldier to be as effective as our elite troops." "We train them to survive," Jiwan replied. "We train them to protect our people and our homes. Nothing more." Commander Hyunsik sat behind Ji-won. He was her military advisor, a broad-shouldered man with gray in his hair and old combat medals on his uniform. He leaned forward and whispered something to her. Ji-won nodded. The Council has reviewed your military structure, Velthus continued. Your Marines, your Army, your Navy, all of it. And we are willing to acknowledge that you have the right to defend yourselves. But we must insist on some oversight, some way to ensure that humanity doesn't become a conquering force. Ji-won looked around the chamber at all the frightened faces. Some were trying to hide their fear behind anger. Others weren't even trying. I can agree to discussions about mutual military transparency, she said carefully. Regular reports on fleet movements near Council space. Joint training exercises to build trust. Things like that. Would that be acceptable? The delegates looked at each other. Some seemed relieved. Others still seemed suspicious. But it was better than nothing. That would be a start, Velthus said. Good, Ji-won replied. She picked up her data pad and prepared to leave. The meeting seemed to be ending on a positive note. Then Hyunsik spoke up. He addressed the chamber directly, which was unusual for an advisor. I have a question, he said. This discussion has been about humanity's military capabilities, specifically about our Marines, our ground forces, our naval officers. Is that correct? Velthas's antennae twitched with confusion. Yes, your standard military forces. The ones that have proven so effective. The ones you've seen in action, Hyunsik clarified. Of course, the ones we've seen. Hyunsik glanced at Ji-won. She gave him a small nod, permission to continue. I just want to make sure I understand, Hyunsik said. You're concerned about our regular military, our standard forces, the troops we deploy openly in conventional warfare. That's what this entire meeting has been about, the Velix delegate said, frustration clear in his voice. I see. Hyunsik stood up. And has the Council studied the structure of human military forces? The different branches and units? Several delegates looked uncertain now. Velthus pulled up a holographic chart showing the organization of Earth's military. We have, he said. Your Marines, Army, Navy, Air Force, and Space Force, we've documented all of them. And you've seen most of them in action, Hyunsik said. During the 3 wars. Yes. Did you notice anything missing from your research? The chamber fell silent. Delegates started looking at their own data, searching for what Hyunsik was implying. Ji-won spoke quietly, almost gently. You've been afraid of our regular forces, our standard military, and I understand that fear. What you saw was frightening. But I need you to understand something. She pulled up her own holographic display. It showed the human military structure, but this time there was a section highlighted in red, a section that hadn't appeared in the Council's research. You asked about our regular military, Ji-won said, and we've been happy to discuss it. But that's not all we have. The red section expanded. Words appeared in dozens of languages translated for everyone in the chamber. Special Forces, what is that? Velthas asked, though his voice suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Our regulars fight wars, Ji-won said simply. They fight them well, as you've seen. They're brave and tough and well-trained. Every human soldier is someone we're proud of. But Special Forces, she paused. Special Forces don't fight wars. They do other things. What other things? The Thexian delegate demanded. Ji-won looked at Hyunsik. The old commander's face was unreadable. Things we don't talk about, Ji-won said. Things we don't need to talk about because if Special Forces does their job correctly, no one ever knows they were there. The silence in the chamber was now absolute. Every delegate stared at the holographic display at those 2 words that seemed to promise something dark and unknowable. How many? Velthus asked quietly. How many of these Special Forces do you have? Enough, Ji-won replied. And they're more dangerous than your regular military? Than the soldiers who devastated our armies? Ji-won collected her things. The meeting was definitely over now. Our regular soldiers fight to win, she said as she headed for the door. Special Forces fight to make sure there's nothing left to fight about. You've never seen them in action. If we're all very lucky and very smart, you never will. She and Hyunsik left the chamber. Behind them, the delegates sat in stunned silence, each of them now wondering the same terrible question. If humanity's regular forces were this frightening, what exactly were their Special Forces capable of? And more importantly, were they already out there watching and waiting in the dark? The Thexian patrol fleet moved through the darkness between stars. 6 ships, each one a masterpiece of crystalline engineering that glowed with soft blue light. Inside the command vessel, Overseer Krenth stood before the main display, his crystalline body refracting the light into rainbow patterns across the bridge. Krenth was old, even by Thexian standards. His body had grown darker over his long life, now a deep purple instead of the clear crystal of youth. He had served in the Thexian fleet for 90 years. He had seen battles and diplomatic missions and first contacts with new species, but he had never felt the cold worry that gripped him now. "Report," he said to his sensor officer. "Still nothing, Overseer. No signals, no debris, no evidence of battle. That was the problem." 2 weeks ago, a Thexian patrol of 12 ships had been conducting routine sweeps near human territory. They were just watching, recording, making sure the humans weren't planning anything aggressive. Standard procedure. The kind of mission Krenth had supervised 100 times. Then the patrol stopped reporting. All 12 ships, at the same time. The Thexian High Command had waited 3 days before declaring them missing. They waited because sometimes patrols lost communication, equipment failed. Solar storms interfered with signals, but 12 ships at once? That was different. The council meeting on Velthris Prime had happened just days before. The meeting where the humans had mentioned something called Special Forces. The Thexian government didn't believe in coincidences. They sent Krenth and his investigation fleet to find out what happened. Approaching the last known coordinates, the navigation officer announced. Krenth braced himself. He expected to find wreckage. Maybe evidence of a battle with human forces, maybe even an ambush waiting for them. What he didn't expect was what actually appeared on his screens. "I have the patrol fleet on sensors," the officer said, her voice confused. "All 12 ships. They're intact." "What?" "No damage visible. They're just floating in formation. Power signatures are minimal, but they're there." Krenth felt his crystalline structure vibrate slightly, a sign of deep unease. Ships didn't just stop working. Crews didn't just disappear. "Take us closer. Prepare boarding teams. And charge weapons. I don't like this." His fleet approached carefully. The 12 patrol ships hung in space like ghost vessels. Their lights were on. Their systems were active. But no one answered hails. Krenth led the first boarding team himself. His combat suit felt heavy as he crossed from his ship to the nearest patrol vessel, through a flexible tunnel. 6 armed Thexians followed him, their weapons ready. The airlock opened without problem. The corridor beyond was lit and pressurized. Everything looked normal. Too normal. "Life support is functioning," one of his team members reported. "Atmosphere is breathable. Temperature is standard. It's like everyone just left for a break." They moved through the ship systematically. Weapons bay, empty of crew, but all weapons secured and accounted for. Medical bay, empty, with no signs of injury or treatment. Bridge, empty, with all stations showing normal operation. The crew quarters were the worst. Personal items were still there. Photos of families, books, games, half-finished meals in some rooms. It was like everyone had simply vanished in the middle of their daily routines. "This is impossible," Krenth said. "A crew doesn't just disappear. Where are the bodies? Where are the signs of struggle?" They found the security office. Krenth accessed the computer system, pulling up the ship's logs and video recordings. What he saw made his crystalline blood run cold. The recordings showed normal operations. Crew members working, eating, sleeping. Then, at a specific moment, all the internal sensors went offline. Every camera, every motion detector, every security system, all of them at exactly the same time. "That's a system-wide failure," his technical officer said. But the logs show no malfunction. Someone shut them down manually. From where? From everywhere. The shutdown commands came from multiple terminals simultaneously. "Bridge, engineering, security." It's like the entire crew decided to turn off all sensors at the same moment. They checked the other 11 ships. The story was the same. Crews going about their business. Then sensors shutting down. Then nothing. When the sensors came back online hours later, every ship was empty. Krenth was reviewing the data when one of his junior officers called out. "Overseer!" I found something in the security footage. Just before the blackout, the recording played on his data pad. It showed a corridor on one of the patrol ships. A Thexian crew member walked past carrying a data pad. Nothing unusual. Then, just for a fraction of a second, something moved in the background. A shadow that didn't match the lighting. A shape that was there and then wasn't. "Play it again, slower." They watched frame by frame, and there it was. Just for one frame, something was visible at the edge of the camera's view. Something in dark armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "What is that?" The junior officer whispered. Krenth knew what it was. Or at least he knew what it had to be. The humans had mentioned special forces. And now a Thexian patrol had disappeared without a trace, with only ghost images of something moving through their ships. "Get everyone back to our ships," Krenth ordered. "Now." "But Overseer, we haven't finished the investigation. Now!" His team didn't argue with his tone. They moved quickly back to their ships. As they crossed through the flexible tunnel, Krenth couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Back on his command ship, he ordered his fleet to move away from the patrol vessels. They took up a defensive position and continued scanning. "I want every sensor we have active," Krenth said. "Full power. I want to know if a single particle of dust moves out there." His crew worked quickly. The display showed the empty patrol ships floating in formation. Nothing moved. Nothing changed. Then the lights started going out, not on the patrol ships. "On Krenth's own fleet, what's happening?" he demanded. "System failures across the fleet," his engineering officer reported, panic rising in her voice. "Life support is fine, but weapons are offline. Navigation is offline. Communications are..." The main screen went dark. Then it flickered back on. But instead of showing the space around them, it showed text. Simple, clear text in Thexian language. "Leave." "Who sent that?" Krenth shouted. "Where did that transmission come from?" "I don't know." "It didn't come through our communication system. It just appeared on the screen." More text appeared. "You were not harmed. Your crews were not harmed. You are being given a choice they were not. Leave now." Krenth's hands shook as he tried to access any system. Nothing responded. They were helpless. Whoever was doing this had complete control of his entire fleet. "Overseer," his sensor officer said quietly, "I'm getting brief readings. Multiple contacts. They're inside our ships. How many? I don't know. The sensors keep getting blocked, but I think they've been here the whole time. Since before we arrived." Krenth remembered the shadow in the recording, the shape that moved too fast to see clearly. He thought about his missing patrol crews. Not dead, not harmed, just taken. Disappeared without anyone knowing until it was too late. The screen changed again. "This is your only warning." Suddenly, all systems came back online. Weapons, navigation, communications, everything. As if nothing had ever been wrong. "Full power to engines," Krenth ordered immediately. "Jump coordinates back to Thexian space now. But the patrol ships, leave them. Go!" His fleet turned and jumped to faster than light speed. As they left, Krenth looked at the display showing the space behind them. The 12 patrol ships still floated there, empty and intact. And somewhere in the darkness, invisible and unknowable, something watched them go. In the command ship's empty cargo bay, a section of wall seemed to shimmer. If anyone had been there to see it, they might have noticed the air moving strangely, like heat waves in summer. But no one was there. Lieutenant Minho stood perfectly still in his adaptive camouflage suit, watching Krenth's fleet disappear into jump space. His suit adjusted constantly, matching the walls and floor around him so perfectly that he was effectively invisible. "Team 2, report," he said quietly into his helmet radio. "All clear." Specialist Yunji responded from somewhere on another ship in Krenth's fleet. "They never knew we were here." "Mission complete then. Begin extraction." Minho moved through the ship like a ghost. He had been aboard since before they left Thexian space, hidden in the cargo that was loaded for the investigation mission. He had watched the Thexians board the patrol ships, had watched them panic, had been standing 3 meters away from Krenth when the text appeared on the screen. It was all about sending a message. The Thexians needed to know that humans could reach them anywhere, could board their ships without being detected, could take their crews without anyone seeing. But the message also needed to be clear. Humans weren't monsters. The patrol crews were alive and well, being held comfortably until the situation was resolved. Special forces didn't kill when they didn't have to. They just needed to prove that they could. Minho reached his extraction point and activated his emergency beacon. A small human stealth ship would pick him up within the hour. By tomorrow, he would be back on Earth, writing his report while the galaxy struggled to understand what had happened. The Thexians would tell others. The story would spread. And species? Recruit Hansel had survived the regular military's toughest training. He had served 3 years in the Marines, fought in 2 campaigns, and earned enough decorations that his dress uniform barely had room for them all. He had jumped from aircraft at high altitude, fought in urban warfare simulations, and once stayed awake for 72 hours straight during a field exercise. He thought he knew what hard meant. He was wrong. The facility was buried 3 kilometers beneath Seoul. No one on the surface knew it existed. Even most of the government didn't know. It was simply called the site by those who worked there, though its official designation was Special Operations Command. Hansel stood in a gray concrete room with 19 other recruits. They were all like him, veterans of the regular forces, proven in combat, physically perfect. They had all volunteered for this, though none of them had been told exactly what this was until they arrived. The door opened, and Master Instructor Soman walked in. She was small, barely reaching Hansel's shoulder. She looked young, maybe 30, with short hair and a face that might have been pretty if not for a long scar that ran from her left eye to her jaw. She wore a simple black uniform with no rank insignia, no medals, nothing to indicate who or what she was. She was the most dangerous person Hansel had ever seen. "Sit," she said. They sat. "You've all been told that this is selection for special forces," Soman continued. "That's correct. But before we begin, I need to make sure you understand what that means. This is not like any military unit you've served in. This is not about being stronger or faster or tougher than the enemy." She began walking slowly along the line of recruits. "You've all fought in wars. You've seen combat. You think you know what warfare is. You think you understand what it means to serve your species." She stopped in front of Hansel. "You don't." Her eyes locked on his. There was something in them. Something cold and distant, like she was looking at him from very far away. "Regular forces break armies," she said. "They fight battles. They win territory. They destroy the enemy's ability to fight. This is important work, necessary work, but it's not our work." She moved to the center of the room and pulled up a holographic display. "Special Forces breaks worlds." Quietly. The display showed a planet. Then it showed statistics. Population, military strength, industrial capacity, political structure. Everything you would need to know to conquer a world. "Our job is not to fight battles," Soman said. "Our job is to make sure battles never happen. Or if they must happen, to make sure our side wins before the first shot is fired." She changed the display. It now showed footage from one of the wars. Hansel recognized it. A Velix fortress that had held out for months against Marine assaults. Thousands of human soldiers had died trying to take it. Then one day the fortress just stopped fighting. The defenders surrendered. No one knew why. 3 SF operators spent 2 months inside that fortress, Soman explained. They contaminated the water supply with a compound that caused extreme paranoia. They planted evidence of traitors among the command staff. They hacked the communication systems and sent false orders. By the time they were done, the defenders were more afraid of each other than they were of our Marines outside. She looked at each recruit in turn. The defenders surrendered because they thought they were surrounded by spies and traitors. They never knew that only 3 humans had caused their entire command structure to collapse. That's what we do. The next few hours were a blur of information. Soman showed them mission after mission, operation after operation, things that had happened during the 3 wars, things the public would never know about. There was the enemy supply depot that exploded, destroying 6 months of accumulated weapons and food. The official report said it was an accident. The truth was that 2 SF operators had spent 3 weeks infiltrating the facility and carefully sabotaging safety systems. There was the enemy, Admiral, who suddenly ordered his fleet to withdraw at a critical moment, costing his side an important battle. The official report said he had lost his nerve. The truth was that SF intelligence teams had found out about his secret family and sent him messages suggesting they were in danger. There was the enemy communications network that failed during a major offensive. The official report blamed technical problems. The truth was that a single SF operator had physically infiltrated the central relay station and inserted corrupted code into the system. "You're showing us war crimes," one recruit said. His voice uncertain, Soman turned to him. "No, I'm showing you warfare. Real warfare. The kind that saves lives by preventing battles from happening in the first place. The kind that ends wars quickly instead of letting them drag on for years. But the rules of war apply to regular forces, someone interrupted. Because regular forces fight in the open. They wear uniforms. They identify themselves. They follow rules because everyone can see them. We don't have that luxury, or that limitation. She pulled up another display. This one showed casualty statistics from the 3 wars. Millions dead on both sides. Now look at this, another set of statistics appeared. These showed projected casualties if the wars had gone on longer. Tens of millions dead, maybe hundreds of millions. Every SF operation I showed you shortened the war, Sumin said quietly. Every act of sabotage, every piece of psychological warfare, every infiltration mission, they all saved lives. Not just human lives. All lives. Because wars that end quickly kill fewer people than wars that drag on. She let that sink in. This is the choice you're making. If you stay, if you complete selection and become SF operators, you will do things that keep you awake at night. You will lie and steal and destroy. You will manipulate people and break their trust. You will operate in the shadows and never get credit for what you do. Sumin's voice softened slightly. But you will save lives. You will prevent wars. And you will protect humanity in ways that most humans will never understand or appreciate. The training began the next day. They learned to operate in hard vacuum with minimal protection, using suits that were lighter and less armored than what Marines used. The idea was that they needed to move fast and stay hidden, not survive direct combat. They learned to fight in toxic environments, using drugs and treatments that let them breathe poisoned air for short periods. Hansel spent 3 days in a chamber filled with chlorine gas, learning to manage his body's panic response. They learned surgical precision in everything they did. One exercise required them to infiltrate a mock enemy facility, plant a listening device, and extract without being detected. The facility was guarded by the best security experts the military had. Hansel failed 7 times before he succeeded. They learned languages, cultures, and psychology, how to blend in, how to make people trust them, how to find weaknesses in any organization or individual. You need to become invisible, Sumin told them during one training session, not because you're wearing camouflage, but because people's brains refuse to register you as a threat. You need to be so natural, so expected, that guards look right at you and don't see anything wrong. Months passed. The group of 20 recruits became 15, then 12, then 8. Some failed the physical requirements. Others couldn't handle the psychological pressure. One recruit simply walked away, saying he couldn't live the kind of life SF required. Hansel stayed. He pushed through the pain and the doubt and the fear. He learned to do things he never thought possible. 1 year into training, Sumin brought the remaining recruits to a secure briefing room. Colonel Taijin was there, a sharp-faced man with gray hair and eyes that seemed to calculate everything. "You've been training for a year," Taijin said. "You've learned the basics. Now it's time to learn about operational doctrine." He pulled up a holographic file. The words Ghost Protocol appeared in red letters. "This is our core operational philosophy," Taijin explained. "When SF operates, we leave no trace. No evidence, no bodies, no proof we were ever there. The enemy should never know what happened to them. They should only know that something is very, very wrong." He showed them the Thexian patrol incident. Hansel hadn't heard about it, of course. "It was classified at the highest level. 2 operators," Taijin said. "That's all it took to neutralize 12 enemy ships and send an entire investigation fleet running home. They never fired a weapon. They never harmed anyone. They simply made their presence known in a way that terrified the enemy." He looked at the recruits. "That's Ghost Protocol. The enemy should be more afraid of what they don't see than what they do. They should lie awake wondering if we're already inside their defenses, already watching them, already 5 steps ahead." Sumin took over the briefing. "You've all been wondering about the Thexian patrol crews," she said. "Where they went. What happened to them?" She pulled up images of smiling Thexian faces in comfortable rooms. "They're fine. They're being held in a secure facility, treated well given everything they need. We didn't harm them because we didn't need to. The mission was to send a message, not to kill." She changed the display to show a graph. Since that incident, Thexian military movements near human space have dropped by 90%. They're afraid to send patrols. afraid to probe our defenses, afraid of what might happen if they get too close. That's the power of Ghost Protocol, Tejan added. Fear is more effective than VO. The Galactic Council chamber was packed. Every species had sent their representatives, and many had sent military advisors as well. Something big was happening and everyone wanted to witness it. Ambassador Jiwan sat in her usual seat in the human section. She noticed that the other delegates were giving her more space than usual. No one wanted to sit too close to the human representative these days. War Master Thexalon entered the chamber like a storm. He was Krevith, a species that looked like massive reptiles covered in dark red scales and standing over 3 meters tall. The Krevith were old, powerful, and had never lost a war in 400 years. Their empire spanned 60 star systems and commanded fleets that numbered in the thousands. Thexalon wore full ceremonial armor, black and crimson with rank markers that showed he commanded the entire Krevith military. 2 honor guards flanked him, nearly as large as he was, carrying weapons that were mostly for show but still looked deadly. High Arbiter Velthos tried to start the formal proceedings, but Thexalon ignored him. The War Master walked directly to the center of the chamber and activated the holographic display without permission. "I have not come for debate," Thexalon announced, his voice deep enough to vibrate through the floor. "I have come to deliver an ultimatum." The chamber fell silent. Ultimatums were rare in the Galactic Council. They usually led to war. Thexalon's display showed a map of known space. The human territory was highlighted in blue. It looked small compared to the Krevith Empire, which was highlighted in red and spread across a huge section of the galaxy. "The humans have become a problem," Thexalon continued. "They won 3 wars through brutality and endurance. They frightened species that have existed for millennia, and now we learn they have secret forces, shadow operators, ghost soldiers that no one has seen." He pointed at Jiwan. "This cannot continue. The Krevith Dominion hereby offers humanity a choice. Accept our protection. Place your military under council oversight, with Krevith forces ensuring compliance. Allow us to guarantee your security and the galaxy's peace. And if we refuse?" Jiwan asked calmly. Thexalon smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Then the Krevith Dominion will do what the council lacks the courage to do. We will force compliance. We will occupy your worlds until you understand that humanity's time as an independent military power is over." The other delegates started talking at once, some shocked, others excited, a few clearly pleased. The Krevith were doing what many species wanted but were too afraid to attempt. Jiwan stood slowly. She was tiny compared to Thexalon, but her voice cut through the noise. "You're threatening war." "I'm offering protection," Thexalon replied. "But if you see it as a threat, then yes. War. A war you cannot win." He changed the display. It now showed military statistics. The numbers were overwhelming. The Krevith Dominion maintains 4,000 warships. The human fleet numbers 300. We have ground forces totaling 500 million trained soldiers. You have perhaps 20 million. We have 300 years of continuous military tradition and tactical development. You have been in space for barely 2 centuries. More numbers appeared: industrial capacity, resource production, population size. In every category, the Krevith had a massive advantage. You defeated the Korthan and the Veliks because they underestimated you, Thexalon said. Because they attacked you piecemeal, without proper planning or force concentration. The Krevith Dominion makes no such mistakes. We will deploy overwhelming force. We will occupy your world systematically. And your famous endurance will mean nothing when you're outnumbered 100 to 1. He turned back to Jiwan. You have 30 days to accept our terms. 30 days to choose protection over destruction. After that, our fleets will enter human space and we will show the galaxy what happens when a young species forgets its place. Jiwan looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked around the chamber at all the other delegates. Some wouldn't meet her eyes. Others looked almost hopeful that someone would finally put humanity in its place. 30 days, she said. We'll have our answer by then. Thexalon nodded, satisfied. He had expected more resistance, more argument. The easy acceptance made him even more confident. A wise decision. I look forward to welcoming humanity into the Dominion's protection. He left the chamber with his guards. The other delegates immediately started talking, debating, speculating. Jiwan simply walked out quietly with her advisors. Back on Earth, the response was immediate and chaotic. The government convened emergency sessions. Military leadership met around the clock. News of the ultimatum spread quickly despite attempts to keep it quiet. General Doyen, now commanding officer of all Marine forces, attended the crisis meeting in Geneva. The room was filled with presidents, prime ministers, military commanders, and intelligence chiefs. Everyone had opinions. Most of them involved mobilization. "We need to call up reserves," one general argued. "Start building more ships. Fortify our colony worlds. We need allies," a politician countered. "Other species who will stand with us against Krevith aggression." "We need to buy time," another voice said. "Negotiate, stall anything to delay the invasion while we prepare." Ambassador G1 sat quietly through most of it. She had seen this kind of panic before, people making plans based on fear rather than strategy. Colonel Tajin sat in the back of the room. He hadn't said anything yet. No one had asked him to. Most of the people in this room didn't know exactly what Tajin did. They knew he ran special operations, but didn't understand what that meant. Finally, the Secretary General of Earth looked at him. "Colonel Tajin, you've been quiet. What's your assessment?" Tajin stood up. He was older now, his hair completely gray, but his eyes were still sharp. "My assessment is that everyone in this room is thinking about the wrong problem," he said. That got their attention. "You're all thinking about how to fight a war against the Krevith," Tajin continued. "How to mobilize forces, build ships, form alliances. You're thinking like regular military because that's what you understand. What else should we be thinking about?" Doyen asked. Tajin pulled up his own display. It showed a simple diagram, 6 dots arranged around a larger circle. The Krevith Empire has 60 star systems. Their military power is centralized in 6 key locations: 3 major fleet bases, 2 command centers, and 1 central logistics hub. Everything flows through these 6 points. He let that information settle. "The Krevith expect us to fight them the way the Korthan and Velix did. Fleet battles, ground invasions, traditional warfare. They've prepared for that. They're counting on it. And," the Secretary General prompted, "and that's not how Special Forces operates." The room went quiet. Some people were starting to understand. Others looked confused. "You're proposing what exactly?" a politician asked carefully. Tajin looked at G1. She nodded slightly, giving him permission to continue. "I'm proposing Operation Nightfall, 6 SF teams, 18 operators total. Deep infiltration into Krevith territory, simultaneous strikes on their 6 critical nodes." 18 people, someone said incredulously. "You want to send 18 people against an empire of 500 billion? "Yes, that's insane. That's Special Forces." Tajin changed the display. It now showed mission profiles, infiltration routes, target analysis. He had clearly been planning this for a while. The Krevith fleet can't fight if their logistics network collapses. Their commanders can't coordinate if their communication systems fail. Their ground forces can't deploy if their fleet bases are sabotaged. "We don't need to beat them in battle. We need to make sure there's no battle to fight." Doyen leaned forward, studying the plan. As a Marine, his instinct was to prepare for conventional warfare, but he had worked with SF before. He had seen what they could do. "How confident are you that this would work?" he asked. 80%, Tajin replied. "Maybe higher. The Krevith have been a dominant power for so long that they're complacent. Their security is designed to stop fleets and armies, not small teams of infiltrators. And they don't know what we're capable of. They've heard stories, but they don't believe them." "And the other 20%? Jiwan asked. "The other 20% is the risk that they catch one team before the operation is complete. If that happens, they'll lock down their other facilities and we'll have to extract early. The mission becomes partial success instead of total success." Another long silence. "You understand what you're proposing?" the Secretary General said slowly. "Instead of mobilizing our military, instead of preparing defenses, instead of doing anything visible, you want us to simply wait for 30 days, while 6 teams infiltrate the most powerful empire in the galaxy." "Yes, and if it fails? If they catch your teams, we'll be completely unprepared for the invasion." "If it fails," Tajin said, "we're dead anyway. The Krevith have overwhelming force. They'll crush our fleets and occupy our worlds no matter how much we prepare. The only chance we have is to stop the war before it starts." More debate followed, more arguments. But eventually, slowly, the room came to a consensus. It was a terrifying plan. A plan that required trusting in people most of them had never met. doing things they couldn't supervise or control. But it was the only plan that offered actual hope of success. The vote was called. The decision was made. Operation Nightfall was approved. Taejin left the meeting and went deer. Day 3. Team leader Yunho crouched in complete darkness inside a maintenance tunnel. He had been here for 6 hours, not moving, barely breathing. His adaptive camouflage suit matched the metal walls perfectly. Even if someone shined a light directly at him, they would see nothing but another section of tunnel. The Krevith Central Military AI Complex was supposed to be impenetrable. It was built inside an asteroid, surrounded by defense platforms and patrol ships. It controlled fleet movements, communications, and logistics for the entire Krevith military. If you could compromise this facility, you could cripple their entire war machine. Yunho's team had infiltrated by hiding in a supply shipment 3 days ago. They had been inside the facility ever since, mapping systems and looking for weaknesses. Alpha 2, status, Yunho whispered into his helmet radio. I'm in position at the secondary server room, Operator Jamin replied. He was Yunho's technical specialist, brilliant with computer systems. The security is good but not perfect. I can get us in. Alpha 3, thermal exhaust port access achieved, the third team member reported. I can reach the main cooling system from here. Yunho checked his data pad. They had found what they needed. The AI complex had a flaw. It generated enormous heat and required constant cooling. If the cooling system failed, the servers would automatically shut down to prevent damage. During shutdown procedures, there was a 17-second window when security protocols were reduced to allow maintenance access. 17 seconds. That's all they had. Execute on my mark, Yunho said. 3, 2, 1, mark. Alpha 3 triggered the cooling system failure. Alarms started blaring immediately. Krevith technicians rushed toward the cooling systems exactly as expected. In the chaos, no one noticed Jamin slipping through a maintenance hatch into the server room. 17 seconds. Jamin worked faster than he ever had before. His fingers flew over the interface, inserting a tiny data chip into the system. The chip contained code that would remain dormant, hidden deep in the AI's operating system, waiting for activation. 15 seconds. The code installed. Jamin began extracting. 12 seconds. He was back in the maintenance tunnel. 8 seconds. Alpha 3 restored the cooling system. The alarm stopped. 3 seconds. Security protocols reactivated. Yunho let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Alpha Team successful insertion. Beginning extraction. They slipped out of the facility the same way they entered, hidden in outgoing cargo. By the time the Krevith realized anything was wrong, if they ever did, Alpha Team would be gone. Day 7. Team leader Jisoo stood on Krevith Prime, the capital world of the Empire. She wore civilian clothes and a holographic disguise that made her look like a Krevith merchant. The technology was experimental and uncomfortable, but it worked. She had walked past security checkpoints for 3 days without anyone questioning her. Jisoo's specialty was intelligence and psychological operations. Her mission wasn't sabotage or destruction. It was something more subtle and more dangerous. She had spent the week inserting false information into Krevith intelligence networks. Fake reports of conspiracy, fabricated evidence of military officers plotting against the War Master, altered communications suggesting that certain fleet commanders were planning a coup. None of it was true. But it didn't need to be true. It just needed to be believable enough to cause suspicion and doubt. Bravo 2. I've planted the last set of documents, Jisoo said quietly. She was in a government building, having posed as a cleaning worker to access secure offices. Evidence trail is complete. It will look like Commander Draxon has been communicating with 4 other fleet commanders about removing Thexalon from power. Confirmed, her team member replied. I've done the same for Admiral Crescent. The pattern will be clear. Multiple officers working together to plan a coup. The genius of the plan was that it didn't need to be perfect. The Krevith Empire was powerful but also paranoid. 400 years of dominance meant they had enemies within as well as outside. They would believe in conspiracy because they always suspected conspiracy. By day 7, Krevith Internal Security had already started investigating their own military officers. Trust was beginning to fracture. Day 12. Team leader Kyungmin floated in space, tethered to the hull of a Krevith fleet assembly yard. The yard was enormous, a massive station where new warships were built. Right now, 3 battlecruisers were in various stages of construction. Kyungmin was the youngest team leader, only 28, but he had a gift for understanding how things worked and how to break them. His mission was to sabotage the construction process in ways that wouldn't be discovered until much later. Charlie 3, how's the welding integrity? He asked. Degraded by 30% on the primary support beams, his teammate replied. She was inside the station, working on the main battlecruiser. It will look fine to inspections, but the ship will develop structural problems after its first few jumps to light speed. Good. Charlie 2, status on the power systems? Installing flawed components in the secondary reactor. Again, it will pass inspection, but the reactor will have stability issues under combat stress. Kyungmin worked on the exterior hull, applying a compound that would slowly weaken the armor plating over time. In 6 months, maybe a year, these ships would fail catastrophically, but for now they looked perfect. The real goal wasn't to destroy 3 ships. It was to make the Krevith doubt their entire construction process. When these ships failed, they would investigate. They would find problems. They would start checking other ships. Their quality control would become paranoid and slow. An hour later, massive explosions ripped through 2 of the 3 ships under construction. The 3rd ship had its primary systems overload seconds later. Fire spread through the station as crews rushed to contain the damage. Kyungmin and his team were already gone, their stealth ship accelerating away from the disaster. The explosions were staged to look like industrial accidents. Fuel leaks, power surges, failures of safety systems. The Krevith would investigate. They would find negligence and mistakes. They would never know that 3 human operators had caused it all. Day 16. Team leader Dahi crouched on a rooftop on the Krevith military command world. She watched through her scope as General Vexthar left his office building, surrounded by guards and entering his armored transport. Dahi was a combat specialist, but her mission here wasn't assassination, it was extraction. Delta 2 vehicle is in motion, she reported. Understood. Route is clear. Traffic systems have been compromised. We have control. The transport moved through the city streets. Dahi and her team had spent days planning this operation. They had hacked into the city's traffic control, mapped guard rotations, and studied Vexthar's schedule. The general was a high-ranking officer with access to communication codes and strategic plans. He was also notoriously cautious, which made him perfect for their needs. The transport turned down a specific street, one that Dahi's team had chosen. At exactly the right moment, the traffic lights all changed. Vehicles blocked intersections, pedestrian crossings activated. The transport was forced to stop. That's when Delta Team struck. They used flashbang grenades and sonic weapons to disorient the guards. They breached the transport in seconds, grabbed Vexthar, and were gone before anyone could respond effectively. The entire operation took less than 2 minutes. By nightfall, Vexthar was on a stealth ship heading back to human space. He would be interrogated gently and would provide information about Krevith command structure and protocols. More importantly, his disappearance would cause panic. A general, taken from the heart of their military command world with no evidence of how or who did it. The Krevith would assume internal betrayal. They would suspect their own people. Trust would erode further. Day 21. Team leader Woo Jin worked in the cargo bay of a Krevith fuel depot. He wore a hazard suit that was marked with Krevith Supply Corps insignia. No one questioned him. He was just another worker, moving containers and checking inventory. Woo Jin specialized in sabotage and demolition. His mission was to contaminate fuel supplies across 12 military bases. The contamination was subtle, a chemical compound that wouldn't show up on standard quality checks but would cause engine failures after prolonged use. Echo 2. I've completed treatment of fuel reserves on bases 4 through 8. His teammate reported from another location. Contamination levels are optimal. They won't detect it until ships start having engine problems. Echo 3 here. Bases 9 through 12 are done. All fuel shipments are compromised. Woo Jin finished his own work on the depot's reserves. The beauty of this operation was its delayed effect. The fuel would test as normal. Ships would load it and fly without any immediate issues. But after a week or 2, engines would start malfunctioning. Small problems at first, then bigger ones. The Krevith would investigate. They would trace the problem back to fuel quality. They would start checking all their fuel supplies, creating massive logistical delays. Ships would be grounded. Quality control would become a nightmare, and they would never know that 3 human operators had caused it all in a single day. Day 25. Team leader Ciola sat in a communications hub on a Krevith military station. She had been here for a week, posing as a junior.